I want to start with going back to my favorite magazine that I read, and that's HBR. And in some recent article, some recent edition, September. So they discussed and described a lot about different models that would help, or that they promise that would help organizations survive in a VUCA world, so in a changing world. And one of the sidebars I definitely liked was the one that's on the screen right now, which is describing a bit of teal organization where you also have holacracy, and then you could combine with sociocracy, I think, even though holacracy has a lot more prescription to it than sociocracy does. Polarity, agile. So you see there's a lot more than just sociocracy, less Scrum Studio. So there's a hell of a lot more. What is interesting in the article, it always comes back to this kind of self-management. So if there's one thing that is recurring in everything that is coming up in surviving the VUCA, it's about self-management on different levels. And in the sidebar, you see this as well. They go like self-management on individuals, towards teams, towards organization. So for me, the key question is, what is the right level of self-management for my organization? As we have seen in the teal organization, or Lalou is reinventing organizations, the cultural difference is there. You can be in a more red organization, more amber organization versus a green organization. You will need to approach those organizations with a different meaning, with a different impact. So if you, to my opinion, if you just say, okay, let's go for an organizational self-management thing, where they are at this moment in time mainly in an orange level, where it's competition and profit and things like that, like we have seen in the poll, then this might be very difficult to get it up and running. So I think we cannot disregard the different steps and the different growth levels there. Everything is living in a system. And that's why I like large-scale Scrum or less, because one of the basic principles to start with is this kind of systems modeling, systems thinking. It's one of the 10 principles where this is based on. What is happening in systems modeling, we try to get an understanding, where is the organization or the system or the team or the individuals that we work together with, where are they at this moment in time? What are the artifacts, what are the variables in the system that are influencing everything? Or actually everything is connected to everything. So in the example, let me see if I can annotate. Let's see if we can use the fancy tools here from Zoom. So in the system, you see, for example, here backlogs. And backlogs is a nice thing. So if we would say, okay, backlogs is the number of backlogs is just one variable here. So, and then we see there is an arrow like this going into siloed teams. So this would mean that the more backlogs, the more queues we have in our system, the more we have siloed teams in our system, or the other way around. So the more siloed teams we have in our system, the more we will most probably have disagreement in the priority of order of things. We also see arrows like this with an O mentioned on top of it, which means it's the opposite effect. So it means like the more backlogs we have, the less we have a sense of the global priority for an organization. So, and this is interesting to know. So we start plotting out all the different variables that are playing a role in this current system. If it's either a red organization or a green or a teal one, it doesn't matter. It's like, what are the variables in this context and how they are playing around with each other. So, and if we know this, then we can say as well, like, for example, global priority here. If we say, okay, we are in a very fixed environment where there's nothing really much changing, then it's okay to have many queues, many backlogs in your system, because okay, then it's okay to have a different opinion on that. Then it's also okay to have siloed teams in your organization. So because it's a fixed priority anyhow. So you have lots of time to make sure that this priority is understood by all the teams, by all the different queues. So that's not an issue. And if you have siloed teams, then most probably things will go faster in a short time of period, because siloed teams means you have condensed knowledge needed. So, and if you have condensed knowledge, you can repeat this exercise on this knowledge quite often, which means that you become an expert quite fast, and the work gets done quite fast. But in a siloed team where you have no need and flexibility, But as the context of this webinar was as well the VUCA world and changing and this complexity, then we would say, okay, you know what, this global priority, it's not that fixed because of market condition. It needs to swap and shift constantly. So if we know that this shift is there and that we need to agree on that one, then we see that we have to reduce the queues or the backlogs in our system to the absolute minimum as needed. So if we reduce the backlogs as a maximum to the minimum as needed, then we see as well that siloed teams won't work that well. Now we need to go more into this agglomeration of different skills like Hunter presented as well. So how can we get there? So if we have less of the siloed teams, then most probably you have less disagreement on those priority changes. And this allows then the organization to shift fastly. So, and this is how we try to do some systems modeling. Just to get an understanding, not to judge. Just like, okay, how are variables playing with each other, against each other, and how is the system behaving? So without judging, just pure for understanding. Of course, we are in an agile environment, and now I need to clear this up. So up, and then, of course, we do this in an agile environment. It means that we do this collaboratively. If we would do systems modeling just by our own, then we just have one model of the system. And every person will read the system in a different way. So it means that every person will have a different model about the same system. So it's crucial that we do this kind of systems modeling in a group so that we can share our own opinions and agree on on the differences in the models that are there, so that we get to some kind of shared understanding about the system we currently are working in, living in, and get going there. If we do this with the development team or a small organization, then it's pretty easy. It stays small. If we go into bigger organizations, like we did those things as well for example, base company, then you get into bigger stuff. So it's not only about having a systems model for group understanding in a small part of it. No, we try to actually do systems modeling for the whole system. So if you have lots of people, that's going to go a little bit more easy. For example, if you have 30 to 60 people doing systems modeling, then you give different groups of people different parts of the systems to start modeling. And then at the end, you bring them together again into one big systems model of the whole system. If you look at the picture, you see it might be very complex, lots of post-its, lots of arrows going back and forth, O's, no O's. So, but for the people that are creating this kind of model, if you would ask them now, like, okay, where is this variable in the system? I'm pretty sure within 30 seconds they will point it out to you. So, and that's a crucial part because of the collaborative environment on creating those things, then they figure this one out. If you have the whole systems modeled as a group, then you get to a sort of understanding what is hampering us, what is not hampering us, how is it affecting us. So if I, for example, for one variable, move the slider up, for example, if I say, okay, I will introduce a new backlog in our system or a new queue in our system because we want to have more of the, like for example, we want to split the analysis with the development, means we are adding an extra queue in the system. What is the effect of this extra queue towards a complete effectiveness of the organization? That's something that we can now evaluate by just following the arrows for the variable where we want to shift or move the slider either up or down. And then if we have this understanding about the system, then we need to continue, of course. So getting to an understanding is for us, or for me at least, step one. If you don't understand the system, then you have a huge risk about optimizing for either your personal identity, so you optimize for you personally, or if you do it in a small team, then you would optimize for that team. And this kind of local optimization might have very negative consequences for the whole organization. So we want to avoid that. That's why we say, okay, we first try to get through an understanding about the whole system as a group. And once we have that, then we need to figure out, like, okay, if we have this understanding, what are we now optimizing for? Maybe it's one variable, it could be two variables, it could be three variables. You start with one. And if you say, okay, I want to optimize for this variable in the system, for example, this kind of flexibility in this VUCA world, then it's like, okay, we move the slider to the maximum. We say, okay, we want 100% flexibility. So, and then you follow the arrows. Every arrow that is not an opposite also moves up to 100. Every arrow that has an opposite, you actually move down to 1 or 0 even. So, and we design for perfection. And I love this. This is a concept that comes from John Seddon, who is the co-founder or inventor of the Vanguard method. And he is also coming like, okay, you always do organizational design towards perfection. Even though you will never reach it, this is the optimum that you go for. And afterwards, you start exploring the constraints. And that's a similar thing that we do for within less. If we look at less, this is a small picture. If you want to have the full-blown story behind this picture, there is a YouTube video, which is also on the slides from a talk I did at Agile Prague recently. The full picture is the organization, and you see in the green side that we have PMO, you have account managers, you most probably have enterprise architects. And that's more the current way of working. You have a customer, and the customer is giving their demand to some business department, and you have enterprise architects splitting it up for the different teams that you have in your organization. Then there's a lot of dependencies that they need to manage, and of course PMOs, project managers need to do that. Then all those separate pieces need to come together. You need some kind of crew that is building it up together. Then, yeah, if all those pieces come together, you don't know if the full-blown thing is still working, so you need to separate QA, most probably separate operations, and then it goes back to the customer. No way you will have a happy customer. It will have taken too much time, so there will be an issue. And of course, the issue needs to go to customer service. Customer service was completely out of the thing there, so we require people to build up this kind of knowledge base. So all the other teams that are already working now need to make sure that this knowledge base is being up to date, so that customer service at least has an idea what to do. So, and that's a short story about the organizations blowing up, similar as Hunter already mentioned as well for the Scrum Studio. You get too many silos, too many management, too many governance on top of that. So if we say, okay, within less, and we want to optimize towards perfection, and we say, okay, we want a direct connection with the customer. We just have one backlog, one product owner, and we are going to steer teams that are 360-degree, that have a 360-degree product view. So instead of creating all this green part here, we are just keeping it pretty simple. And we say one backlog, one product owner, and a 360-degree product view from within the teams, and we have direct connection to customers. So the teams are also mandated, or they have the responsibility to deliver an integrated product and not just small pieces or a part of it, which is very motivating as well for the people within the system. They have immediate gratification of the things they do, because as soon as they deliver something, you have a customer applying or using it. So there's immediate feedback, which helps in motivation as well, or at least that's what I see. So that's how we design for perfection, similar to Hunter and also James. It's like going from this full-blown picture into just the yellow part is going to be a hell on earth and require some, for my opinion, some top-down direction. So this self-management, I don't think self-management will make sure that we go from the full-blown picture and towards more of just the yellow part. That's where I think people need to design the organization for. So, and then you design for perfection. And after this kind of design for perfection, there are a couple of tools that help you explore the constraints. Because without constraints, then the previous picture is the yellow part is where we want to go for. But then every organization, if you explore the systems model, you will see there are a couple of constraints to deal with. One of the tools that we use is feature team adoption maps, where we see, okay, what is on the vertical axis, what is the component, the architectural structure of the product or the service that we want to deliver. And on the bottom part, the horizontal axis, we say, okay, how much of the things can we actually get done within the same environment, and where are the teams located, and how can we combine those teams? And then we see, okay, how much of this, where are the boundaries, which is then, let me take the drawing tool. This is a boundary, for example. Now we put really hard boundaries. Those hard boundaries can be because of contracts, because of political correctness, because we don't have a mandate over there anymore. So then we start really plotting out, those are the boundaries that we have. And within those boundaries, we are going to do a disruptive change, really flipping over the system. So you go there, we would flip the system from green to yellow at once. So in a small organization, exploring constraints with feature team adoption maps might be enough. Like, for example, Sparefoot, where we did this kind of thing in June. So we also did this kind of feature team adoption map, and you see on the tweet as well, and they said in June already, by September 15th, we are going to flip the system from what we are today towards this yellowish organization, and we are going to prepare everything to flip the system by September 15th. In the second tweet, you see that by August 25th, that's the moment they flipped it around. So they prepared the flip for a month, and then they really did this kind of disruptive change. Why? Because they got this understanding. They got an understanding about the system and what they really wanted to optimize for. So that's one thing. Of course, for a small organization, that's okay. For bigger organizations, it can be more complex. For bigger organizations, it might be that the constraints are so narrow or that the organization is that big that you also need to consider within the constraints we can flip, but what are we going to do with the things outside the constraints? And that's where we find the Management 3.0 tool, the Meddler Scheme, very important. It's a kind of low-cost method to explore different models on how to interact. Like this is for base where you have the CIO and direct reports trying to explore how are we going to have this flipped system working together with the rest of the organization. And they came up with something like shaken, not stirred. So within the green box, you have less huge. Outside the green box, they used more of the managing successful programs. And that's okay. So it's not really mixed. They have the boundaries clearly defined, and we can go from there. So you have managing successful programs, then you go to this one backlog, and then you have a less huge. A less huge, you don't flip around at once. It's not that the green box was flipped around at once. You flip one of the horizontals one by one. So pretty much product per product, as Hunter was mentioning, which also allows people to, which also allows you, because this is being top-down managed, designed. So it's like you push this up on top of people, and that's something we do not want. Not within less. That's something in S3 you also don't want. So that's why we flip also like one product by one product, because then we can ask people to volunteer. So we make sure they understand the system. We make sure that they understand the experiment we want to do, that what we want to grow, and then we ask volunteers to be part of the flip. It's a bit different than the on-invite of sociocracy, but it helps. What is important is that we do not force change upon people. As soon as we start forcing change on people, that's where the change or the flip will go slow down and the impact will not be there. And that's where you have lots of frustration, and the organization will just flip back to the old way of working. So you need this kind of volunteering. This is key of the speed of change, and it's also key to make sure that this kind of agile thing or self-organization is going to keep continuing.
Could you wrap up, Jurgen, because we're going off.
Just 2 more slides, and then our thanks, Alexander. It's not because you designed this once that things will not change anymore. It's a volatile environment, not only outside the company, also within the company. So you have seen the initial slides of the areas that they want to define. This is an evolution of the areas where they have clear purpose defined. So if you look at fulfillment, onboarding, I'm not yet a customer, but I want to become one. If you look at the other areas, all of them are customer-centric. They are not behind an account manager and an enterprise architect. No, they are immediately connected to where they want to be. So also this picture is already outdated, by the way. So this is an organization 2 years in adoption. And even there you see already that this kind of huge organizational change is just volatile and happening. So what's the right level of self-management? Just take a lot of books, take a lot of other principles. James, you really need to make a book that we can have your book as well in this list. This is for me the start. So if you say, okay, I want to design an organization for more flexibility and not just let it grow or be more active in that domain, then for me, this is the list of books to start with. So for sociocracy, there will be a book coming. There is enough on the websites already, but go into them, start to combine, mix them together, and you will figure it out. So I'll jump to some more of things. So learn from others, higher experience, and experiment. That's the final words I want to bring.
Okay.